Hi guys, Chris Billingsgate here from Billingsgate Archery, and I got my Still Hunter HP out again today, and this is made by White Wolf Archery. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit more about it. Now the obvious thing with this bow is the extra set of limbs on here, and the most common question is what's the deal with those? Well, historically, there are some cultures on Earth who have made four-limb bows in the past. Closest, regionally wise, to us was an Indian tribe in central Maine. And Penobscot might be the way to pronounce the tribe's name, I'm not sure. But they basically had a long bow, and instead of hybrid limbs, they just had flat limbs for the front limb section. So at White Wolf, Tony at the Bowyer basically took an old idea and said, well, let's make a modern rendition of that. And so he made these little hybrids. Now I call them hybrids. A lot of people call them recurves. And just technically why I call them hybrids is because technically a longbow, the string does not come in contact with the limb. Okay, this does not come into contact with the limb, so why aren't I calling it a longbow? Well, technically longbows have very little recurve or no recurve. These obviously have a recurve. So if you've got a slightly recurved limb but the string still isn't touching, to me that qualifies as a hybrid. So I call these the hybrid pony limbs. Now White Wolf refers to them as, basically the pony limbs. And you may be thinking, well, in terms of Native Americans, you think of this as the horse and these are the ponies for the extra horsepower, so to speak. But actually that's not where Tony originated the name from, I don't believe. I think he had more in mind of like huge, diesel motors in the early days had small like gasoline motors that cranked up the power to actually start up the big diesels. I don't know if they actually still use those nowadays, but those were called pony motors because the little electric motors weren't strong enough or something. I don't know exactly why. So I think that's where Tony got the name pony limbs for this, but it does fit nice because it sounds like a Native American term in terms of terminology. Now, the purpose of these, one of the main purposes is you can just take these pony strings off and just shoot the longbow. Now, if I do that, I got a 40-pound longbow, which is nice for roving and stuff. You're not going to lose or break too many arrows, and you can practice all day long with it, which is really nice. Now, if I want to more horsepower, go hunting, or for whatever reason I want the power, the speed, and all that, well, then I put these on, engage the pony limbs, and now it's a 56-pound bow. So you've basically got two bow setups in one. And beyond that, I can adjust these strings a certain amount, or actually put shorter strings up here to really crank these up and actually increase the weight above that. So it's actually adjustable from 40 pounds to 56 pounds and then up. I haven't messed around with it to really find how high I could push it. Maybe I'll do that in the future. But that's the main idea. Primary is to have that adjustability, which in addition to that is if you have arrows that are already made up and already cut and already fletched, you can actually adjust the pony limbs to those arrows as opposed to trying to modify the arrow's spine to match the bow, which is another nice little feature. Now a couple more handy little things that these do is they have a dampening effect. Now if you think about it, this string is pulling this way and this string is pulling this way. So when you shoot and this limb comes forward, this is almost like a giant one of these. It's just kind of a boom. So it really has that dampening, so there's hardly any shock at all, because this is like a shock absorber. And this is like a shock absorber too, because they're pulling against each other. So when you shoot and this comes forward, it's like whoom, as opposed to you know, with no shock absorber. And that is a really amazing feel to it when you actually are shooting the bow, and I really like that. Now another thing is that this is obviously pulling the main limb directly in line. So it almost has a railroad track effect for your main limb. Now let's say I'm shooting a recurve. I could be kind of torquing the string a little, and that recurve tip could be going all over the place. And when I let go, that recurve limb, you know, kind of does one of these, you know. Or even a longbow limb, even though it's much more stable, there still could be a little bit of a snake to the travel of the limb as it comes forward, even though it's very small. With this, pulling this directly in line, it seems to have like that railroad track effect. It just shoo. And I can't prove this without, you know, high-speed photography and all that, but it certainly feels like that's what's happening. When you shoot, it just feels like the bow is just staying so stable and shoo, and that arrow just you know, like I said, I can't prove any of this. This is my opinion. It seems to be what is happening, and it's a really satisfying feeling to have that added stability. And once again, with these out in front, they are, even though they're very lightweight, it does have a little bit of a stabilizing effect, like a normal stabilizer would work, you know, as far as twisting and torquing. They just seem to work well all together, even though all the science behind it is not really proven yet, because we haven't really hooked it up to high-speed cameras and this and that. But the proof is in the pudding when you actually shoot it, and you get that real satisfying feeling that just that arrow is just going straight and true and with a whoop. You know, none of this crazy vibration stuff. So there's a lot more to talk about with this bow, so I'm not going to do that now. I'll make other videos. But that's just kind of a quick rundown on the pony limbs, and I hope you found that information useful. Okay, I'll see you on the tube.